And here they are. Let's give them a hand.
All right. You guys can hear us. All right. We're excited to be here. This is a great group. Just to maybe kick things off, we're not going to have a moderator. It's really just going to be a conversation between the four of us. And maybe I'll just start by explaining like how this came about. Maybe a month ago or a few weeks ago, we were on a CEO roundtable with maybe 20 CEOs, and we were talking about the future of the workforce and like how we're all working. It was such an interesting conversation that I left that room thinking, why are we only having this conversation with a small group of 20 CEOs? This should be a discussion that we're having more broadly, because I was learning a lot. And we have very, very different perspectives on how our workplace should work. And I don't think there's one right way. So maybe to just start, I'll just introduce myself. We'll go down, and then I think Sid had an idea of like maybe we each talk about the way our. What was your idea? Do you want to talk about it?
Oh yeah, just follow on to what we were talking about. I think it's really interesting for us to share everything we were doing pre-pandemic and how that's changed. Also, I actually feel like we should ask the audience to cheer really loudly, just because we're like the best room.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Woo! Oh wow.
Oh, now we have to do it again.
Okay, hold on. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah!
Okay. All right.
And we might break in every few minutes and just be like, we have to do that.
This is competitive next door, right?
We're gonna start the wave. All right. So I'm Davis Smith. I'm the founder of a brand called Cotopaxi. We're based here in Salt Lake. An outdoor gear brand with a humanitarian mission. We're a B Corp. And we're focused on fighting poverty. We sell great backpacks and jackets, but the reason we exist is to fight poverty. And last year we helped almost 1.3 million people living in poverty through the brand. So it's been exciting and really rewarding. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, we all have to follow your example. Like, you've just done a great job leading out on what it means to build a great company. So my name's Cydni Tetro. I'm the CEO of Brandless. I'm also the co-founder of the Women Tech Council, so I wear both hats. But at Brandless, it's thank you for the shout-outs for Women Tech Council. At Brandless, we've had a unique opportunity to also build a mission-driven company and really focus on how we help people take better care of themselves, their families, and the planet, and really focus in the categories of wellness. It's been an amazing journey since last summer when we raised a bunch of money and we've been acquiring businesses. And just the opportunity to think about how what you build impacts people and their families and the planet and how you do good. We really believe that people want to be a force for good, and we want to be the platform that enables that in all sorts of ways.
I'm Joseph, CEO, founder of Neighbor.com. We're a nationwide peer-to-peer self-storage marketplace, so we connect neighbors together to open their homes up to each other. We try to follow in the footsteps of Cydni and Davis in building a mission-driven company, so we are literally trying to get people to serve and help their neighbor out, and we distribute all of that income across the country to people to pay for their mortgages and to earn extra income for vacations, and that's our company and that's what we do.
Jeremy Andrus, CEO Traeger Grills.
Love my Traeger.
Yeah, thank you. Buy more pellets. It's a good margin product. So I've been at this 9 years, and it's been really interesting to see the good and bad that businesses go through, from $70 million of revenue to $850 million of revenue, and down from there this year. And I would say that, I'll start by saying our mission is to bring people together to create a more flavorful world. And for us, flavor is, of course, it's in the food, it's in the products, and wood-fired deliciousness by a Traeger. But it's also, much more so, it's in community. It's in the richness of a life well lived. And we really believe that, and I think we understood this better as we got in the pandemic, what community means to people. And this whole topic's been an interesting one that I've thought about a lot over the last couple of years. When the pandemic first hit, there was no choice. Like, we're all remote all the time. Except I came in because I have 6 children at home, and that was untenable. But it was a lonely office. And I've had the chance to hear your perspectives and sort of balance. And I loved your comment at the beginning, Davis, which is there isn't a right or wrong. It is we build this according to our mission, our vision, our people. And I'm looking for this conversation because I actually, listening to you 3 a few weeks ago, really gave me some help cement some of my perspective on this topic.
Yeah, well, thank you to all of you, and I'm really excited to kick this off. So maybe to start off, we'll each talk a little bit about what our workforce looked like pre-pandemic, and then briefly we'll just kind of explain what we're doing now, and then we can dive into a little more detail around what we're doing specifically. But to start, I was the world's biggest believer in being in the office. I worked in my office down here in downtown Salt Lake every day. I literally had never worked at home. And anytime someone joined our team, they had to move to Utah. And I was a big believer that culture happened in the office. I discouraged people from working at home. And that was kind of the perspective that I had. When the pandemic started, obviously everyone started working at home. And by August of 2020, so about 3 or 4 months, however many months that was into the pandemic, we made a decision to just go fully remote. And so our team is now, like this year we've hired maybe 150 people, and the majority of those are not in Utah. So we're hiring people from all over the country. And it's not even a hybrid. It's like we are fully remote. We did keep our office, and some people go to the office every day, but I work at home almost every single day. And so that's kind of the big shift that we've gone through.
Yeah, I actually love that we all have different perspectives that we came from and that we're headed to along the way. So for me, in our company today and in the companies that I was running when the pandemic hit, I have been a big advocate of hybrid for my entire career. Even at my time at Disney, I was based here and I commuted, but I actually sought jobs that were supporting a balanced life because it was important to me as a mom with my children. I wanted the flexibility to be at the soccer field or to be at the dance competition. That was just really important to me. And so I had this philosophy of like, that's what it was supposed to be in any company that I was running because I needed it to show up better. And so while pre-pandemic, I would say we were definitely more in the office, and we definitely went through the shift where everyone was home, right? And no one's going to the office, or the people that were going in were by themselves. And today we're back at this place which is hybrid, but I was actually trying to come up with a better name for it because it's more than hybrid. It is do what is best for you and be accountable for your job. If coming in the office is best for you because you have 6 kids at home and it's too hard to work there, great. But if you need to leave, don't ask permission. Please just go and do the things that you need to do. If you need to work from someplace remote, do that. If you need to work from the office, do that. We're going to try to be respectful of how we schedule meetings so that if you're coming in the office, you can do that. But we are going to support wherever you're at that makes you be the best person on our team possible. And I just think I have this unique perspective of it was so important to me that what I'm really grateful for is the pandemic made it important for other people so that everyone shows up completely who they are at all times. And that is an amazing thing that happened over the last 2 years because there's no other force that would have ever given perspective to the entire world about what it means to allow your employees to show up for exactly what they need and how they need and do great work. Nothing else could have done what has been done in the last 2 years.
I love that. I think actually what you said really reflects what the pandemic did for people. Is it gave people options. And that's what I think companies have started to do is give people options. I think Jeremy mentioned there is no right answer to this right now. We believe there's this large contingent of people out there that crave community. They want to be with other people on a daily basis. At the end of the day, we as humans, we're social beings. We have social needs. And there's so many people out there that after 2 years of staring at a Zoom screen, they are dying to have some sort of daily professional interaction. And so we've taken a very in-person approach, and we've built our company around that. We're in the office Tuesday through Friday. And that's a part of not only our work approach, it's a part of who we are as a company. We are building these in-person communities all over the country as a company. We're the first marketplace that's hyper-local. You look at Airbnb and Uber, where they connect people across great distances. We're the first marketplace ever connecting people in their neighborhoods. And we have individuals reach out to us and they say, I've lived next to this neighbor for 5 years. We've never said more than hi to each other because that's how we are in today's society. And then I connected with them on your platform, and now we go to lunch every Thursday. We've had people start dating because they literally connected on our platform. And we want to create that same strong sense of community at our workplace because it's really a mission that we're all about.
So Joseph, talk a little bit about when you hire people and what expectation there is as well.
Yeah, so we make it really clear up front that we are a very in-person culture. And I think there's a lot of companies that really want to have this strong in-person culture, but they're scared of the impact that that's going to have on recruiting. They're like, remote in some ways opened up a lot of talent by allowing you to recruit across the country. What's it going to do if I go in person as a company? And the reality is there's this big group of people that want to be in person, and right now all they have are remote options available to them. Like 80% of the companies out there are remote first these days, or hybrid. And so if we can come in and we can offer them a really strong, I'll tell a story. We were interviewing a candidate, and she had several kids, kind of similar to Jeremy, your experience. And she's like, I need to have a professional life. And I've been looking everywhere for a company that will let me separate my crazy kids and my mom life from my professional life, where I get to go socialize and talk on a daily basis with other adults. She's like, finally, I found you guys. We hired her, and she's now managing a $2 million budget for us. She's just absolutely crushed it. And she's able to have now these separate lives because we're providing that for her. So just remember, from a recruiting standpoint, you're providing something that a lot of people are looking for. And then there's companies like Cydni's that are providing a really flexible hybrid for people that are looking for that. And there's companies like Davis's that are providing remote for people that are looking for that.
I was very much like Davis pre-pandemic. I wanted everybody in every day, and it was not for management reasons. If you've worked for me, you know I am the worst micromanager. Doesn't interest me. Don't want to be micromanaged, and I don't want us to micromanage people. And so it wasn't butts in seats to know that people are working, because it's the worst way to inspire good people. It was about showing up and feeling connected to the energy that Traeger was all about. And it was about showing up and connecting back to our mission, which is to sit across the table and eat together. And this belief that food is the ultimate communal bond, we live our brand. And that's important to us. Pandemic hits, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how do we manage this? Not just here, but we travel the country and teach hundreds of cooking classes in retail shops. And, we found a way to do these things through technology. We found a way to get into 150, 200,000 living rooms every week with technology and a cooking class. And we found a way to do happy hour Friday afternoon with storytelling, and we drink remotely, and it was awesome. It worked just fine. I remember getting 4 or 5 months into the pandemic and coming out of my office, my home office, after a dozen hours feeling like I'd been incredibly productive, but feeling very unsatisfied. And I remember when we started to get together and in person, and we started to do bike rides, climbs up mountains, happy hours, things outdoors, and leaving and just feeling very satisfied. And what I've realized over time is our company's never going back to my prior philosophy. Partly because I don't think it's the right thing. It's not the right thing for us. As I started to develop my view of what Traeger will look like, and we're still mid-flight. We're still learning these things. I feared that we would lose people. And all of our recruiters said, as we're using them to hire other people, they would say, boy, so-and-so just renounced their return to the office policy. Prime hunting season. And I feared that would be us. And I got to a place where I believed that there are things that happen really nicely with flexibility. I love the idea of, holding people accountable to execute on what you ask them to do whenever it works for them. I mean, like, there's no reason why you should miss a soccer game if you're willing to get up early and do your, whatever the schedule takes. And I love that part of it. I also was a believer that everybody lived in Salt Lake because I didn't know how to get to know people remotely. And we've changed that. We have found it always starts in Salt Lake, but we have hired some people outside of Salt Lake who were never coming and where we would have compromised on the quality of talent. We eventually are landing somewhere in the middle. We're going to be 2 to 3 days a week, and those are not going to be flexible days. Like, we're going to be in as a company. It's not pick your favorite 2 or 3 days. I want people to be in, to get to know people, to share food together, to enjoy the energy. But just like pre-pandemic, you can leave anytime you want. I mean, that was we've always had a flexible policy. But I want there to be gravity around 2 or 3 days a week because I think people crave that. And to some extent, we're going to lose some people along the way. I mean, we hired someone who lives a third of a block from our office on our technology team, and he said, I don't want to ever come in. I'm like, my gosh. And we actually just did our boot camp, and I saw him, and I'm like, dude, I just saw you this morning walking into the office. He's like, yeah, I just live just down the street. And so we're finding our way through this, and I don't know if he'll survive or not. And you know what? That's fine. Part of this is my own choice. I don't want to work from home every day. I don't want to have virtual relationships, and I have learned to get to know people that way. I find that when I leave the office after a day packed full of meetings with human beings in person, that's when I feel the most satisfied, even if it's not when I feel the most productive. And so we're trying to find this middle ground, and I think your comment around there is a self-selection that happens. We built a 5-day week, and then people found different ways to do things, and now we are defining what the future looks like, and we're going to filter for those people. And that's going to work for us because we found people that want to be a part of that. And yours is going to work for you because you're hiring people that believe that's a great way to have a career. And so I think it's connecting mission, vision, values with how we execute, and then ensuring that part of the consistency is the people that are part of it buy into that philosophy.
Can I ask Davis, Jeremy and I have talked about this, community of sharing over food or being together. One of my favorite parts of what you talked about in our conversation the other day is how you've been able to build community remotely. I want to hear about the hike stuff.
Yeah. So first of all, I just love this conversation because it's we have such different perspectives. And, Jeremy's right. Has anyone been to the Traeger office before? It's awesome. Great food, high energy, great food, and just good people and great food. And it's really fun. And so I understand the draw of wanting people there. For me, honestly, I will never go back to my office every week. I just love it too much. I just didn't know what it was like. During this last 2 years, I'm I'm changing diapers. I'm like potty training. I'm having lunch with my wife and my kids, and it's just really special, and I don't want to lose that. At the same time, I do feel this pull of connection and connectivity that you miss. I can't pretend that it's the same. It's not. But the way that I thought about it was that there is a way for us to create connectivity in other ways, besides being in the office all the time. And so we've come up with some unique ideas. In the summer, maybe we can get away with this because we're an outdoor brand, but we go camping in tents for 3 days as an entire team, including people that have never been camping. And it is awesome. And there are some people that are like
spearfishing. Like, do you bring food or do you spearfish? And
That's his survivor trip.
Yeah, Jeremy and I have done one of these before.
Jeremy's always focused on the food.
Davis's famous last words before a spearfishing trip, where we bought spears, water, and a boat, was, there'll be so much to eat, you can't handle it all. And I remember getting 40 hours in between meals.
The story gets better and better.
You should have brought the Traeger so that you could get some food.
I have video content of a moment, and you and I were not in the same boat, where somebody found a third of a bag of mixed Kirkland nuts, and we divided them one at a time. And like, we're all strategic. I took the cashew because it has more fat and more calories. And we found an island with coconuts, but go ahead. So
now tell us about the company event.
By the way, this trip was great, and
it was amazing.
There was more food maybe a little more food than is being insinuated.
By the time we got to a restaurant at the end, we consumed more in 3 hours than we lost out on the entire week.
The thing is, Jeremy didn't do his part. He came up with a spear that was like this short. It's like, where did you get this spear, Jeremy?
And you can imagine the jokes that came out of that. So keep going.
Okay, so but go back to connectivity.
Sorry, Cydni, sorry.
Back to connectivity. So this camping trip, this summer camp, it's amazing. We have something for everyone. There's people that are out rock climbing or mountain biking. There's other people that are just going on nature hikes. Or we had someone teach how to do better photography, like through your iPhone, crafts, games, competitions, trivia. I mean, we just have a riot. It is such a fun experience to all be together. And in those 3 days, we get to know people at a level that I just didn't experience when we were all working in the office together every day, running into each other in the hallway. The second one that Joseph mentioned was we do every other Friday morning at 9:00 a.m., there's a standing meeting on everyone's calendar for a virtual hike. And everyone dials into the meeting, and wherever you're at, you go outside. And you might be walking your dog around the block, or you might be going on a trail near your home. And everyone dials in, and then someone in the company has been assigned what we call a lifeline. And in the lifeline, they basically, with slides, they walk everyone through their life. And we've had people talking about how they were adopted, and just being totally vulnerable about something I never would have heard at the water cooler in the office. People that talk about a divorce they went through, or when maybe their parents got divorced when they were a child, really formative kind of things that really unveil who these people are. And it's been amazing to have that kind of experience of connectivity, even though we're remote. And so we do find times to get together on a regular basis as a whole company or in smaller teams. This week, our executive team was in during the week, and we were all together. But for the most part, I'm working in my office at home day in and day out.
Well, and I was just going to say, I think the common theme, no matter what the work style is that it's all about people. And we have to build connections. No matter what you're doing, no matter what company you're building, it is really, you only build companies with people. And so we have to care so deeply about the people that are helping us build, and we need to know them. We need to know things about them. We have to build relationships. And I think the way that we're headed is this dynamic way. It doesn't look the same for everyone, but at the core of it is that we care about people. And we want people to live their best lives, and we're going to create environments where that is true. We're going to create activities if we're remote. We're going to put people around the table with food. We're going to put them in the office, because we agree, when people are in the office, the energy is different, or just when you're with them, right? You learn things, you have experiences, and I think, for me, no matter what company you're building, you have to remember it's about the people. I think that's the reason we see things like quiet quitting. Right? We have dynamics at play because we forgot that the people were on the other side, and that when they're frustrated and they close a Zoom call and you don't have something else behind it, that you have no connection. I also just want to make one comment that I think is really important for our younger generations that are coming up. They need mentorship and people and connection in order to be successful. That is going to require a personal connection with them. I'm a big believer that they actually need more office time than others in order to build great careers. We all benefited from that. And it's hard to imagine how the next generations can develop if we too don't give them spaces to meet with great people, to learn what happens, to get pulled into a random meeting that they never would have been invited to otherwise, because it just doesn't happen in Zoom. And so I think we don't have all the answers, but there are really important things, and at the end of the day, it is about people.
100%. Amen. Yeah, there is.
Actually, I think we just need a larger chair in general for the other rooms.
Guys, it's about people. Sid, you got him going.
That's right. We gotta have cheerleading all the time.
What? That was. It is about people, and you always have to step back and acknowledge if you want to build something great, you have to invest in people, and you have to be so much more intentional around building culture in this new model, because it's different and it can be done. And I took some notes as Davis was talking. These are things that I thought about. I wasn't doing email. It was actually I am learning from these conversations. And there are three words that I wrote down that Davis sparked. One is you have to innovate. I mean, like when I hear Davis talk about what he's doing, like there's real innovation. This is more than just electronic and email. There are things that connect his people that work for this model. And so I think we all have to spend more time, I know I do, innovating around our people and what is the experience that they're having. And we're all running experience-driven, customer-driven experiences. Experiences have to happen in our place of work, whether it's four walls or virtual. So I love the innovation that Davis is doing. I think the second is let's be clear about what we're building internally, and then let's optimize for that environment. And so Davis is crystal clear, and so he's really building around that. And the third is, I think you acknowledge that it goes back to there's not one answer better than the other, but there are trade-offs. And so, as I hear Davis describe some of the talent that he's recruited, my guess is they weren't relocating to Utah if you wanted them. And so access to incredible talent, that's, we're making that trade-off a little bit because we have a different point of view. But I think it goes back to there's good, and then there are gaps. And as long as we acknowledge what those are, some of the innovations are how do you cover the gap of having, a C-level in Boston, Minneapolis, and Seattle. Well, those are some of the things that you're doing. I think it's an opportunity to be more intentional, because when you came in 5 days a week, it was much more organic, and I think it requires us to do more. Davis had an interesting idea that I am going to start to implement, even if I'm in the office, because we have hundreds of people. I don't talk to them all every day, and it was pick a couple of people every day, send a personal video. And what an amazing idea to connect with people. Now, they may be right outside my office and quiet, and I haven't seen them for a few days. But I think finding these ideas to connect with human beings differently than we used to it's going to be critical, regardless of which model we choose.
So can we talk a little bit about what this new world has enabled for talent, or doors that it's opened that haven't been opened before?
Yeah, maybe I'll start quickly, and I think it'd be really interesting to hear. I know Sid and Joseph, you guys, and obviously Jeremy as well, but care a lot about diversity, and I think Sid specifically talked a lot about diversity and maybe some of the advantages that that happen in a remote world. But then Joseph, like, how are you thinking about diversity in more of an in-person environment? And then, Jeremy's on my board, so I get to know Jeremy really well, and we talk a lot. But I'd love to hear a little bit about how you're thinking about diversity as well. But in terms of, for us, I think one of the biggest advantages, and what really sold me on this idea of creating a remote workforce, was talent. And we just hired, just a few examples, we just hired a new president, and he was the CEO of Eddie Bauer before this, and before that was the head of a product at Patagonia, an incredible talent. And he lives in Seattle, Damian Wong, and he's not moving to Utah. And he's here right now in my office in Salt Lake, and he's incredible. And we wouldn't have been able to hire him if we said, hey, you need to move with your family to Salt Lake City. He's got a family there, and his wife works, and his kids are in school and teenagers. So we just hired a chief people and impact officer. She lives in Boston. She's incredible. Grace Zunsick. And then we haven't publicly announced it, but just started this week, a chief brand officer, Brad Haranaga, who was the chief brand officer at General Mills. I mean, this is crazy talent. Actually, we have no business even hiring these kind of people, but they're inspired by our mission, and the fact that they can work where they're at and be part of our brand is working. And so I think that's been one of the greatest advantages, and we've seen just an increase in the amount of diversity, ethnic diversity, which honestly was the hardest thing for us. Gender diversity, we've been lucky in that we've always had a strong group of almost all of our investors were women from the beginning of the business. So we've always had more women on our board than men generally. Jeremy was kind of the token guy for some of the time.
I was a token white male.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's been one of the greatest advantages for us.
Yeah, I think it's been great to see what the impact has been. So I have a couple of thoughts. So I get to wear one hat where I think all of the time, especially as we're talking about tech at this conference, about how you increase the number of women in tech from high school to the boardroom. And because today, like if you take the state of Utah, 50% of our workforce are women. And in the tech industry, only 23% are. I actually just saw a preview on a new report coming out on specific technical talent. And today there are fewer women graduating with computer science degrees than when I graduated a number of years ago. So these numbers make me really sad. And they make me think also about what do you have to do in a workforce to make sure you attract and retain diverse talent in our ecosystem. One of the things that women have been telling us for years is that flexibility is their number one driver of reasons that they go to company. Now, lots of people used to say that flexibility meant you work less hours. It meant what they really wanted was to work less hours, and that created all sorts of other stigmas around that. That's not what they were asking. What they were asking for is, let me also do all the other jobs in my life in order to show up for you in a really great way. And so what the pandemic has done, well, in some ways it created the first female recession. In other ways, it created opportunities that never existed before for women to step into executive roles and other positions because companies were willing to embrace flexibility. And I know in talking with thousands of women how much of a difference that has made. And so as companies have embraced that, we have seen women step into amazingly great roles. More women work into those leadership positions. More women moving into boards in the last 2 years that have ever happened in our entire history as a nation in those positions. And the pandemic was a catalyst for us because flexibility is now universally accepted. And that's one of the things that we needed. And so when I think about your ability to attract and retain diverse talent, we have always found that women in tech have a different way that they look at companies. They don't always say this, but there's always been a list of companies that women are like, these companies are best for women to work for. We've always known that. We don't publish the list, no women publish the list, but they know the cultures that when they step into will completely embrace them. And if you want talent, it's about stepping into that space in order to attract that diverse talent along the way. And I think you have to be very intentional. You have to create environments that allow them to do that, that allow them to come in. So I've actually loved that the pandemic has created more opportunity for women. They've been able to take remote jobs. They've been able to step in positions. When I was working with a Fortune 10 company before this. They hired their very first remote executive during that pandemic, and never before were they going to allow that to happen. That's a huge difference. So if we can do more of that, we can increase the number of women in tech. We can increase the number of people of color that step into those positions by giving different pathways, different opportunities for work, and different success metrics than we did historically. And I really believe that's one of the great things that has happened in the last 2 years. We have many problems still to solve. We are not anywhere near an endpoint. But this mindset that has changed, it is good for increasing the number of women in the workforce.
On the program, you probably all see Cydni listed as the CEO of Brandless, running one of the most amazing companies in Utah. But if you don't know about the work that she's doing to help women enter tech in Utah, it's pretty incredible. I don't know if anyone's doing more, so big round of applause for that.
100%.
I want to talk a little bit about this word intentional, which I think you keep hearing for a reason. Like, at the end of the day, this isn't even really a panel about remote versus in-person versus hybrid. It's just a panel about being really intentional with your people. And if you're going to run a remote company, there's a lot of companies out there that are not being intentional about that, and their culture is failing. The reason you're seeing Cotopaxi be so successful with the remote culture and Brandless be so successful with the hybrid culture is because they have CEOs, leaders that care about making it a great experience and providing opportunities to create that kind of community even though people aren't in the same location. On the flip side, we're an in-person company. So we have a lot easier time creating that community and that energy. And we then have to be way more intentional about creating things like diversity. It's very easy for Davis to go hire across the country. We've had to build a really, really strong relocation program. We've recruited individuals just over the last 12 months from, I think, 26 different states. And so we've been very intentional about running a recruiting program where we're reaching out to people that are outside of the state of Utah and bringing that great talent here, because I think we can all agree Utah's like the best state in the country to live in.
Yeah.
Woo! Yes.
I also I think it's worth mentioning, Cydni mentioned this female recession that has happened. I saw a report that was done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce just a couple months ago. We have 1 million fewer women in the labor force today than we did 2 years ago. That's like decades of work that we've been set back.
I actually think it puts us back to the 1970s.
And you have to start to ask the question, why is that? So I think there have been massive benefits to, and Cydni spoke to these, to many people that were female executives that were strong in their career. Remote work opened up all sorts of opportunity to them across the country. Roles became available that were not available before in a very flexible manner. But there's also this big group of people who had to leave the workforce because they're taking on a greater share of household responsibilities. There's a big contingent of women out there who are still in the workforce, but just like this candidate that I talked about earlier who we interviewed, I think something like 60% of women are reporting higher levels of burnout today because they're taking on now a full-time job and a greater share of the work at home. And that's imbalanced. Like, I have a hard enough time doing my day job. You start to add on all sorts of external responsibility to that, like you're going to burn out really fast. And so, again, I think that's enabled us in some ways on the recruiting side from a diversity perspective. We have to work a lot harder to recruit from out of state and be intentional about that. But we also provide a really great home for women who are in the state that have a family at home and they need a place that's not home to be intentional about their work so they can separate those lives and not face that kind of burnout.
I love it. I wish I didn't have to talk because I just want to listen to this. But I would say a couple of things. Number one, I love your perspective, Sid. I wish you and I had spoken 10 years ago. I don't know that it would have resonated with me. I'm confident that Traeger was not on that list because we were inflexible. And I have come to love flexibility. You know, we want pockets of energy, and we want centers of gravity, but that doesn't mean that is a collective desire. People are individuals, and within that framework, we really want to support that. Traeger would love to be on that list, so wherever we put our name on, I get it.
Okay, we'll talk.
So the talent piece, this has been another unlock for me that, you know, and I would say even more than diversity. Diversity is certainly part of it, something that's been hard for us here in Utah. It has unlocked, it has broadened our aperture on talent. And so I would say that maybe 15 to 20% of the people that we've hired since the pandemic are outside Utah. And we've had to learn to work differently, but we have found people that have been incredible additions to our team who would not have been an option otherwise. We're still figuring out how do we make it work so that we are connected with them, because when everyone's virtual, everyone's virtual. When most people are in a place and you've got a few virtual, that's when it just from an not just a technology, but an interaction perspective, it's harder. We're still working on that. But one of the things that we do, for example, is we do GMT, Good Morning Traeger, every Monday morning, 8:30, high energy, DJ, food. It's an amazing meeting. Well, you know what? If you are remote and you want to come in for that, you got to come out on Sunday night. It's the last thing we want someone doing. So we're moving that. And there are other things that we're realizing we need to accommodate for talent that doesn't live here. We always start the search here. We always push for that, but we always hire the best person. Tiebreaker goes to the local candidate, but when there are qualities that we need that we need as a team otherwise, it's a great opportunity to just build a better team.
I just really love this conversation around intentionality and innovation. I think if anyone walks away with anything, those are the two things you should walk away with, that this new world requires more innovation and to be very intentional about the individual. I think that's also one of the things, like we were intentional around like, hey, let's do the Monday morning thing, and then all of a sudden we realize it requires everyone to fly in on Sunday night. Right? So there's this whole new perspective that I think if we lean into about how do we take our individuals, help them show up best every day, give them community, give them people, give them relationships, and do it with intention, we can build really great companies that just make the world better.
Amen.
All right. Really quick before we thank everyone, I think there's a movement that we need to start here in our community of welcoming more people from Utah into our tech community. Cotopaxi and Silicon Slope sponsored about 150 refugees and new Americans and immigrants to come to the conference for free. And they're here. We're actually at 3:30, so in 30 minutes or so, we're going to be meeting up on the 4th floor in the suite area. I forget the name of it. It's like something Bailey. What's the name of that?
Ida Bailey.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So it's this big, large suite area. So it's not one of the little suites. Please come up and welcome. I don't know even how many of them are going to be able to come to that portion of it, but please come up and be part of the community with them, welcome them, get to know them. So at 3:30, come up. We'll need to get you wristbands, but we'll be up there to give them out, and we'd love to have you guys come up and support this great part of our community. Thank you.
With that, we need like one loud cheer.
Yes, let's do it.
Again.
Yeah!
Woo! Thanks, you guys.